Thank you for staying as we go beyond the headlines. My name is Benjamin Akapo. Now, as we discourse with our guests, and we have one guest seated at the moment, hopefully we shall be joined by the other one in the course of the show. We get into topical matters that have been up for discussion this week. We're going to be talking about the Guinean situation when we go on the international front. We're also going to be looking at what has been happening in our country in terms of security. The murders, the femicides, among others. What exactly is happening in our country? How about WASI leakages? It appears there's quite a history to it, and for decades we've suffered this problem. Year in, year out, there are leakages. What exactly is going on? Some have said, look, it's because WAEC has a monopoly. We must stem the tide of that. The education minister has spoken about serializing the exams. What do you think we ought to be doing? Those, among other matters, we get into this morning as we host our guests. Right off the bat, let me let you know that you can get interactive with us. We'd love to hear from you. So share your thoughts with us on WhatsApp. Don't call, just WhatsApp 0551 575757. It's as easy as that. 0551 575757. When it comes to the call line, when we activate the phone lines, 0302 211 693 extension 4. 0302 211 693 extension 4. Thank you for complying. Right now, though, let me say a very good morning to at least the guest I have seated at this point in time. Elvis Darko is editor of the Finder newspaper. And as editor of the Finder newspaper, it appears this morning we found you and brought you into the studio. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Right. So even before we get into some of those topical matters, very soon we're going to be celebrating the man Nkrumah Memorial Day and all of that. I was just thinking, from 57 to becoming a republic in 1960, to the coup d'etats we've had in this country, to the democratic dispensation, especially from 1992 to now. If I were to ask you, Mr. Darko, to reflect on Ghana, of course, you may not have lived since independence, but you've read and you know and you've experienced, especially in the Fourth Republic. What do you see in today's Ghana? If you are to reflect on Ghana, what do you see? How do you describe Ghana?
Well, based on the records will show that basically we have not made much progress. The reason being that at independence, if you look at Ghana's economy and Ghana's infrastructure and everything at the time compared to some countries that are far ahead of us today, obviously, it shows that if Ghana had done the right things, if we had gotten it right, we should also be among the League of Nations that the world would have been talking about today as maybe the African tigers in terms of economic performance. And that brings me to the issue of military coup d'etats. Out of the 64 years of independence, almost 30 years of it has been with military coup d'etats. And if you look at the coup era and you compare to the democratic era in our dispensation, obviously, even the democratic regimes that didn't last much, example, the era of Liman, just 22 months in office, but if you look at the kind of things Liman was doing,
right,
if his regime had not been interrupted, probably would have been far better off at least.
And that was with the People's National Party, which had an Nkrumahist, agenda.
Yes. And that is the point we should be looking at and realizing that military coup d'etats do not bring anything good to anybody.
Right.
They have never been helpful to us, and therefore we must do everything possible to continue to try and fine-tune the democracy we are complaining about. Because in the midst of all the challenges we have with the democracies, they seem to have done better for this country than all the military regimes that have come. And that, to me, is a strong message that every Ghanaian should look at. That, look, we have had this number of years as what? Military regimes in Ghana. And if we compare to the democratic era, we realize that we're far better off being a democratic era, no matter what the challenges are. So all the kind of excuses that have been given to overthrow military regimes,
to overthrow civilian
regimes by military leaders, turn out to be even better than what the military people have come to do for us. So it's about time we begin to realize that, look, democracy is not a perfect system of governance.
Right.
Let no more deceive us. It has its own challenges. That's why we all must continue to make proposals, suggestions on how we think we can fine-tune it and make it better. And if we do that, we will, in the midst of the challenges, begin to see some changes in our lives and begin to realize that, yeah, in the midst of the democracy, we can see real things we can point to that we are making some progress. And for me, that is very critical. So for me, let's not, you see, we have become fan of trying to bastardize everything that is happening in our democratic regime, thinking that the democracy is the problem. No, democracy is not the problem. The problem is that we are practicing our own version of democracy,
right,
which is different from what democracy should be. So we have the ideal situation, which is a proper democracy,
right,
and what we are doing, which many of which are different from what democracy should be. So let's try and continue to push for what true democracy is. And the moment we push for more of that, and we begin to get it, we will be different from whatever it is.
So I'll just say this. There's no utopia when it comes to democracy.
Never.
Not even in the West.
No, look,
there's no utopia.
I'll give an example to the Ghanaians. Look, when I watched the American election, the last elections,
right,
I was shocked that in America, we have militia groups, gun-wielding militia groups,
right,
for both Republicans and Democrats,
right,
who were willing to fight each other simply because of an election.
We also saw what happened in the Capitol.
And I'm like, is this the democracy we are all hailing and saying that? Do we think that we had gotten to that point, we would have survived?
But to be fair,
but the systems,
and that is a very important point you make. They have practiced democracy for centuries already.
That's the point.
And so they can stand some of these shocks because they have institutions in place. Point. But the other thing too to take stock of is that that's not a normal occurrence when it comes to United States elections. I mean,
but
the Donald Trump era has been characterized by a lot, but I do agree.
But it did happen.
It did happen.
So the question is, if it should be the same situation in Ghana, do we think we can survive? Right. So we should understand that democracy, I've said democracy is a divisive system. Because it says that the winner should take everything and the loser should wait till your turn.
Yes.
So in a democracy, a nation is virtually divided.
It's not always that way.
Okay.
It is our brand of democracy. And again, like you were rightly saying, that has made it zero sum. When you look at other countries and how they practice it, and I agree, look, if you look at Pakistan and how they practice democracy, and even recently Afghanistan and how they practiced their democracy, which the Taliban has taken over. If you look at even in our African setting, the democracies across, you would realize that government of the people, by the people, and for the people is not necessarily the same in each of these countries. We all have our brand of doing it. We all have our different
I've always said that, look at our chieftaincy system. The chiefs come from a royal gate in the community. But then our system recognizes that we can't leave out the rest of the people in the community. So the Odikro comes from a different family. The Chiami comes from a different family. If you take all the sub-chiefs away, the chief still constitutes a group called the Council of Elders. So by the time you see the entire community, every family seems to have some representation in the chieftaincy institution, even though they don't belong to the royal family. Every family seems to have some form of representation in the chieftaincy institution. So everybody feels represented. And therefore, whatever decision comes from the chief and the council of elders, everybody wants to obey because I have a representative there. But instead of us looking at how we can learn from these systems and see that if the royal gates are only 2 or 3 in the community, but the Odikri is from a different family, the chairman is from a different family, that Safo Ache is from a different family, all kinds of clan leaders, and all these people have been included in the chief's council of elders in order to rule the community, because they realize that the community is made up of different families, and therefore if we don't include all of them in our governance, the chief might not be able to succeed. And this has been one reason why the chieftaincy system has worked for us, because once a decision comes from the palace, everybody obeys because it says this is the decision of the community, because it wasn't taken by the chief alone. It was taken by the chief and his council of elders including all clan chiefs who took part in this decision. And I belong to a clan. My clan chief was there. So if my clan chief also agrees to it, I'm supposed to obey. But what do we see in the democracy? The democracy is that no matter how good you are, if I decide that I'm not going to include you in my government, I won't include you. Even if you have something to offer, and I think somebody who has less capacity to do it belongs to my party, so it's the one I'll put there, the one I'll put there. So you see, we should begin to grow as a country and begin to realize that there are things that, even though the person's party is not in government, the person has a lot to offer this country if we're given the opportunity. Why don't we find means of getting these people to do great things for our country? So for me, this idea of people thinking that, oh, military regimes come to overthrow dictators, democratic dictators. I say a democratic dictator is better off than the best military leader.
People would contest you on that. I've heard Professor Etia of the University of Ghana Faculty of Law say in recent times that yes, coups are no-nos, but there are some instances where there could be some justifications for them. I've interacted.
Justification to benefit who?
Just hold on. I've interacted in recent times with the likes of Brigadier General Nunu Mensah, Captain retired Joe Kwamisowo, and others, and they point to the fact that indeed coup d'etats are not exactly the way to go, and these people have histories of their own when it comes to military interventions. But the point to be made is, when you have a democracy that over a protracted period of time is simply not serving its purpose, when the people, let's take Guinea for example, 1984 thereabouts, we saw what happened as far as Sankara is concerned. We moved on from that time, and look at that, 1984 till about, or is it all the way till about 2004. Then that leader passes on. We have immediately another coup, another takeover. We experienced that all the way till around 2008 thereabouts, another transition. Alpha Condé comes in after between 18 to 24 months. He takes over as a democratically elected leader, civilian if you like. Look at the track record of Alpha Condé. Started beautifully, university professor, academic. He knew exactly what democracy stood for. But look at the incarcerations of political opponents. Look at what the mineral resources, especially bauxite, iron ore, and others have yielded for Guinea and what it could have yielded. Look at corruption in the system and all of that. People sometimes look at these things and tell you, then why don't we go the way of Singapore, which may not necessarily have had a military leadership, but had a strong man take over, and over about 3 decades, Singapore moved from a third world country to a first world country. Make no mistake, I'm not fostering military interventions or any such things, but I'm laying bare the realities of why sometimes countries go that way. And you saw the celebrations, didn't you?
Singapore is a beautiful example you've cited.
Right.
Go and check the human rights record of Lee Kuan Yew. You talk about
what exactly?
Go and check the human rights record.
I have read the entire book
that you can't rule people
of Singapore.
You can't rule people and give them the right to do whatever they like. You need to compel people to do things. Okay.
Did it work for Singapore?
We need to be able to determine whether this is what is good. That's what I'm saying. That if we want to run democracy, we should understand it.
Right.
Okay. You cited example. Do you know that globally, to 2008, the total number of coups in Africa alone is equal to the total number of coups around the rest of the world. Yet compare Africa's development to the rest of the world. If coups are beneficial and bring anything meaningful, Africa should be the most developed continent in the world.
But coup makers don't necessarily stay on a maximum of 2 or more years, and then again
we have had the longest rulers in this country
and then again, unless you're looking at, and I agree with you, where coup makers have taken off their military uniforms, become civilian leaders.
That is the point.
From there. So we even saw that in Ghana.
So you see, we need to understand some of these things. Look, recently we had the Kwame probe in Ghana. Who are you to go and tell a military leader to go and probe somebody for going and do a purchase? Corruption is worse in a military regime than a civilian government. But you cannot question a military government about its corruption. Who are you? Who dare you? So let's begin to analyze this issue critically. Which military is going to probe a member of the government who has gone to do a procurement? You think that there's corruption in it? Today you can petition Shraj. At least Shraj has investigated and recommended that the head of public procurement authority be removed from office. At least, even though the criminal prosecution are not taking place, at least the man has been removed from office. But do you think that if the person was a military leader and the head of procurement was a military leader, you are going to petitions? Shira do not even exist because all constitutional bodies will be closed down anyway under a military regime. So who are you going to investigate him? So you see, we should begin to see, the democracy of press is not perfect. It has challenges. But we should also begin to see the lights that are in it that would never exist if it were in a military regime. So let's begin to look at it. See, Guinea's situation, for instance, is something that I ask myself. If people really didn't like Alpha Conde, no matter how the man is intimidating, you have been given the opportunity to go to secret ballot polls. How come they didn't have majority of MPs in parliament from the opposition to go and turn around the constitution and say, Alpha Conde, you don't qualify to be president because you changed the constitution?
But in making that point, it is a bit, I'm not finding the appropriate word, but when claims of rigging happen en masse and you can't really delineate or distinguish the executive from the legislature. I mean, it's across the board, isn't it? It is. So for me, let me tell you, these excuses will not work.
Let's educate citizens. Problem of Africa and democracy is that many citizens don't know their rights. And many citizens don't know small ways they can hold the governing people who govern us accountable. We sum everything up and just say, president. The president is not the ruler of the country. See, there cannot be a change of constitution in the country with only the president. Because in a democratic regime, if you want to change the constitution, you need the people of parliament to do it. You have voted people who bought your votes. You sold your votes to people to go to parliament. If it goes to parliament, then the president also say, I want to buy your vote to change the constitution. You expect the person not to do it. But if you have voted people with conscience to parliament, we didn't take money from them, we didn't take any gifts from them, and we vote the right people to go and serve us, we know they will do a right thing. In this country, we know that if you go to our parliament, there are many people that if we had our way, they will not be there. Because we realize that there were competent candidates who stood with them. Candidates who had a conviction that they have to go and serve. But they didn't have resources, so we didn't vote for them. We will go and vote for those we think have resources. So if our parliament tomorrow decides it's not serving as well, sometimes we complain about, and parliament approved this deal. Parliament did this. It is the quality of the materials to put there and their conviction. So we should also realize that we are part and parcel of the process of changing these constitutions. Because if you don't give the power to the wrong person, the person will go there and say, no, what you want to do, I disagree.
Right.
But if you give the wrong person says, okay, I paid so much, maybe I spent $500,000 to win my election as an MP. And then the president said, I'll give you $1 million. Even the next election is coming, I can get $1 million, you can retain the seat. Help me change the constitution. And I know coming to you to retain my seat will require another $500,000. You think that I'll think about you? I will change the constitution, bring the 500,000 and still win my seat.
Point well made. We'll be following up on constitutions and basically what we ought to be doing, even here, as there have been calls for that. We'll take a bit of a break, and when we return, there's more as we come your way with more talk about the constitution, what has happened in Guinea, our leadership in Ghana, and more. Do stay.
You're ready. Be one of the 3 contestants vying to chip away part of the massive 250,000 Ghana Cedi prize money from the Boss in the Boss TV game show. Dial star 718 star 882 hash on MTN, Vodafone, Airtel Tigo, or simply dial star 422 hash and select G Money across all networks and follow the prompts to enter. Top entries for the week qualify to come to the studio to meet the Boss. Win weekly prizes of TV sets, home theaters, mobile phones, and the grand prize of the all-new Peugeot pickup. The Boss TV game show is proudly brought to you by G Money from GCB Bank, G Money, Papa Naba, Shatum, and supported by Silver Star Auto Limited, sole agents for Peugeot, Graphic News Plus, and DDP, regulated by the Gaming Commission of Ghana.
The MacDan Entrepreneurship Challenge Season 1 has been a journey of great impact. From the application process to the selection of participants, screening and crowning overall winner of MacDan Entrepreneurship Challenge Season 1. The millionaire investor Dr. Daniel Macaulay is staying the course of grooming the next generation of multi-million-dollar entrepreneurs for Ghana. Ghana's unemployed youth population is growing exponentially by the day. A private sector intervention is needed to lighten the burden of employment on the government. The MacDan Entrepreneurship Challenge is one of such privately funded initiatives. Ghana, are you ready for the second edition of the MacDan Entrepreneurship Challenge Season 2? In this edition, 15,750 applications were received. 80 applicants have been selected for the real showdown. So watch out as these 80 business ideas are put to the test in the battle for the ultimate prize. Who will succeed? Who will fall out? And who will win the $100,000 cash prize in the MacDan Entrepreneurship Challenge Season 2? The MacDan Entrepreneurship Challenge is brought to you by MacDan Foundation and Active Media. The MacDan Entrepreneurship Challenge, coming soon.
Welcome back on Prime Morning, and we're still discussing some of those major issues that have caught our attention over this week. We have Mamida Awinado, an international trade law expert, but she also has opinions, shares her mind freely on many things. Mami, good morning.
Good morning.
Good to see you again. Now, we were having quite a feisty discussion here about leadership and the military takeovers across the sub-region. What we've seen, democracy any day for you, right? But is democracy serving its purpose, especially in West Africa, and maybe zeroing in on Ghana?
Right, so I think that sometimes when it comes to language and then semantics, you realize that like when you say democracy, right? Who's democracy and how is democracy being defined? Because I feel like anything that is so rigid that tells people that this is how it's supposed to be, then it's not democratic in its sense. But if something is supposed to be effective, it has to be malleable enough to be able to work in different settings in different ways. And so what will work as democracy in a Western concept where there was never colonization or slavery, where you don't have multiple tribes speaking different languages, will be different.
So the antecedents are different. Exactly.
So in the African, the unfortunate thing is that democracy has been presented as one thing, and it has to be this or nothing else. So is it even democratic? Because it's so restrictive. In the West African context, we need to understand policies. Like I listen to you guys speak about even France Afrique. If you don't understand French policy within the West African region, you can never speak about coups and stuff from a very...
Especially because of even how colonization went on in the Francophone countries, which was very different from British imperialist activity.
And even what is happening now after colonization, agreements that have been signed, that have tied people's currencies to the French pound, that's not even in use, right? And so one of the things about democracy I think is very problematic in Africa is because we're just so restricted. Because one of the things about development, they say is free from fear and free from want. And you're saying that you're fighting for this thing called freedom, but are you really free? And do we really get to choose who we want in power, or they choose for us and then we just go and pick on election?
Let me quickly go to the Guinean situation on that. Yesterday, a lot of activity in Accra on the back of what has happened in Guinea. Alpha Condé, I was just painting the picture. Himself supposed to be the salvation of Guinea after about 30 years, all the way from around 1984 till 2008. We see him come in, university professor, academic, all fine. And then he comes in, things don't necessarily take the sort of turn that the Guinean people, from what we've seen and read, would have wanted. He completes his 2 terms, and everyone thinks, okay, we're going to say goodbye to Alpha Condé. 2010 to 2015, 2015 to 2020. Then, hello, he says, well, you know what? I think I'm the best leader. I can do this. So let's continue a bit further. calls for an amendment, gets his way, there's a referendum, and he stays in power. Now we've seen this military takeover, and it's not the first time we've seen something like this. We saw Yahya Jammeh versus Adama Barrow, even when he had lost an election, and the sort of things that were required to get him out. We saw Mali, parts 1 and 2. Where are we losing the plot?
Look, the dynamics are so intense. If you have to start, especially when it comes to, like I said, Francophone Africa, it's so dynamic. You have to go back to history and understand what's happening in that region, and even how people get to that place of coming to power. You remember when Ouattara was coming? Everybody said, yes, he's going to save us from Babel,
again,
right?
Around 2010.
What happened now, right? The person who was supposed to be more democratic and liberal isn't asked to stay a third term, right? And then they'll say, oh, well, you voted for that. But then we need to understand that one of the things that I'm missing is, especially when it comes to international global politics, is that, and in Africa for one, where during the Cold War, where proxy wars were fought here, you need to know who really controls the narrative. And when you're in a region where you rely heavily on loans, and if you, because I don't want to, if I have to start breaking down a lot of things, then it's going to be,
it becomes,
it's very technical. There are companies. You see, when it comes to even funding elections, I was telling people, the party in power, the opposition, can go to the same company and get funding. And the whole idea is that at the end of the company can even be somewhere in Germany. And the whole idea is whoever wins, when we come in, we get to get the stake in this whole thing. So it's so dynamic, and that is why it's even to filter it. And then Africa becomes a victim of so many things because everybody wants to be here. And when you know how dynamic your region is, that's why we as the citizens must know our history, know the powers at play, and realize that, you know the Lord of the Rings?
Yes.
Whenever, see, it just shows you what happens when people have a lot of power. That's why I feel like democracy...
Power corrupts, absolute power corrupts.
The democracy
absolutely.
that we practice now, trust me, it's not because Africans are any different. It doesn't work in this system. Our history and our cultural dynamics do not allow it.
That's quite a dichotomy, isn't it? Because, you know, Elvis here says democracy any day over everything. But interestingly, you're also saying democracy, yes, but what brand of it? What type of it? Exactly. How is it serving the people? Okay. Is it delivering the bacon to the people who are supposed to be benefiting? Now, do you know what comes to mind? Ignatius Kutu Echampong had his own problems, but interestingly, after he had said what he did, Yintia will not pay to the Bretton Woods institutions, the IMF, the World Bank, who left 2 weeks after he had made those statements. Guess what? We became a sort of breadbasket to ourselves, and even having enough to send out to other nations. The likes of Dr. A.O. Abudu and all were in the mix. It's interesting because while I would any day go for a democracy, the question is, has democracy served us in Ghana? At least the brand of democracy.
Thank you. Let's be the brand.
We've been practicing.
Absolutely. That's
Look at the Fourth Republic.
Absolutely. That's what I'm talking about. And at the end of the day, the same people who say, you know, even to understand why China is where it is, there were certain things that were there in place that, yes, were not democratic before. And you talk about Singapore, right? The same, you see, why didn't Singapore come under serious pressure? Lee Kuan Yew brought in foreign investors. Yeah. A lot of Singapore's development is from foreign investment and from doing international trade. In
fact, even today, it's still very much tied to the international
So he was
system.
a dictator, but why was he so different from other African leaders? So you need to understand why the African context is so different. Because whenever it's Africa, it becomes this whole thing of a dictator, a villain, right? And you see this play out. Look at Saudi, for example.
Saudi Arabia.
And who's Saudi's greatest ally in the world?
The United States.
And why are they not there, but they went to Libya? Look at the human rights. So you need to understand, when you're asking about democracy, you need to now be more clear and say, you know what? We are all human beings. Global politics is a game of chess. Okay, it's about state interest, right? You don't have friends, you have allies. You form allies based on the interests you have. You need to know how to negotiate. You need to know who your allies are and understand that there's nothing like free, there's nothing like fair. There's only how well you negotiate for your state interest. Africa must negotiate for its interest. Then other states begin to respect you as such. You don't go to the international desk or the table saying that you need help or acting like you're vulnerable.
Right.
And that is why we keep having, we have the right to define democracy for ourselves.
I like that point. We have the right to define democracy for ourselves. Right. The brand of democracy we're practicing, though, is it serving you out there watching? Like I said, democracy any day, but the brand of it. Let me come to you, Elvis. And some of the matters that have culminated in the sort of military takeovers we've seen, not just in West Africa, but beyond West Africa, include youth unemployment. We've seen the YEA job fair in recent times, the numbers that thronged the Accra International Conference Center, and matters arising. We've seen the uptick in armed robberies and more. All of these feed into our lack of the proper social systems. Why do you think we are here in terms of these things? I mean, there was talk a short while ago about this taxi driver who claims he even performed he murdered a pregnant woman for the sake of some former member of parliament in Ashaiman. All of that, and this cocktail of things we see. Crime is everywhere, but why are we ending up here with these undercurrents?
Colonialism is gone long ago, but its rippling effect is still the problem because we have been miseducated as a people.
Right.
Say, what we want to compare ourselves to, their education is different. What they have been told to value as a people is different. But we want to copy the same, but yet we don't know our values. We don't know what we are supposed to stand for. We don't know what we believe should work for us. So you see, that's the problem of the democracy we have. We copy everything that they want us to do. But the question is, in our context as a people, how do we say this to happen?
So in a way, you agree with Mami. The copycatism when it comes to democracy is not really working for us, is it?
It's not really well because we are not, first of all, the kind of values we hold, the kind of education we have been given, the kind of mindset we have been made to keep are different from them, what they do in their country.
Before you go on, so my apologies for interjecting. Let me just ask you this question. If you were asked, what are the values of a Ghanaian, what would you say? What values can you... I mean, there are certain countries, you can look at them and say, oh, an American stands for X, Y, Z. Yes. Someone from Britain stands for X, Y, Z. The Ghanaian, what does he stand for? What are his values?
The Ghanaian is not, until colonialism came, we are not supposed to be greedy. Our values are not supposed to be corruption.
Right.
We are supposed to be people who should look out for the good of others. Today, who looks out for the good of others in this country?
We're all looking out for ourselves.
We are looking for ourselves. So if you compare our values as a people, which today no longer plays any role in our lives, it's something that's not going to... I've said the extended family system that we have discarded and thrown away is one of the greatest values that we should never have played with. Today, UK has a minister for happiness. People have become so lonely that the nation has to appoint somebody to be trying to make people happy. To be fair,
there are multiple countries with ministers for enjoyment, happiness, and all sorts of things.
But look at what the extended family system offers us. If I'm in my village and the extended family system was working when we were kids, I eat from my any house that is my family house. I can go there and eat. I don't need permission from my parents that I'm going to this person's house today. I can go there and sleep. And they know that when I'm not home, I'm in this person's home. But today, what do we see? Some people even say that if my family is coming to visit, you have to ask for permission before you come. So we have let people who shouldn't be struggling to be struggling. There are families that 2 or 3 people have more than enough to take care of everybody in the family. But because of individualism, so now the rest of the family will suffer because of that person. But in the past, one person may have 10 acres of farm. Somebody has 1 acre. And is willing to share part of that food from his farm to the rest of his family that don't have food.
Elvis, but let's face the practicality of so-called modernism. Yes, we still see, in fact, if you juxtapose what we see in, I don't want to use the West usually because they are very different from us in terms of even democratic practice. But if you look at what happens in many other countries and what we have here, we are still a very social network. In fact, if it weren't for that, a lot of people will end up on the streets, would end up in so many ways that we are not seeing now. Though it has waned.
In Ghana, nobody should be on the street. If the standard family system works, why should somebody be on the street? Doing what?
How about the social systems that don't work in our country? Look at the number of lunatics we have on our streets.
We are trying to replace what naturally would have solved that problem to copy what is from the West and say, go and create a social welfare system. You understand it? In my village, who stays on the street in the past when I was a kid? Nobody. Because everybody knows that if I don't have food, I can eat from here. If I don't have shelter, a family member will give me shelter here. So you see, as I'm saying, if we don't want to be having problems, Africa needs to be re-educated. See, our minds need to be brought. You see, a reboot of education in Africa. To really let us know what we are supposed to be. That apartheid situation in Guinea was needless. You are the human rights activist, you fought from opposition, came to power, you spent your 2 terms. Straightforward, you are out. ECOWAS should have entertained even that change of
but ECOWAS is not clothed with the power to make those.
That is the problem. So why do they exist?
That's the problem with their AU itself. It's a lost cause.
You see, that's the problem with institutions we copy. You can never be a member of the European Union if you don't meet certain standards.
Right.
It is clear that if you don't do this and do it, you cannot be a member of the European Union. You can remain in your country as president, but with member of the European Union, it's out.
Okay.
Why is that AU and ECOWAS? We don't have standards as to who belongs. Somebody goes to change the constitution, violated the constitution, and is a member of ECOWAS. You talking about from Alassane Ouattara is sitting there.
Yep.
Look at Togo. Almost, and they are still the people who are still there telling the military junta in Guinea that they should hand over power.
Interesting, very interesting point you made. Mami, what would your quick take be on this? I want us to move on to talk education, but your quick take on this before we get there.
But even the youth unemployment, you guys didn't say much on it, but I guess...
No, you can actually
just a quick one
because I feel it feeds into the social systems and how they are not working, which culminates in all of these.
Just because what he said about the mindset thing, that there is, I was telling someone, there is a shift right now in terms of that agriculture is going to be the future. It's going to shape Ghana's economy.
It's going to be or is.
Anyway,
in fact, it has always been.
It's true. So when I say it's the future, in terms of people are saying it's technology, right? But for us, if we hone into the whole agriculture thing and people shift their mindsets about what farming is, it will help. It will transform many people's lives. And people have actually predicted projection. The next 5 to 10 years, majority of millionaires in Africa will be farmers.
When I lived in Brazil,
just to throw that there for the youth.
The biggest shots there in terms of money are the farmers.
Yeah, even South Africa.
But we've denigrated it to the point where young people in the United States, in Canada.
Yes. But why are we not seeing it? Because the education system has told us that we need a white collar job. I should go and put on a tie and hold a file and say, I'm going to work. That is what,
what's interesting?
That is what we have been led to believe.
At the youth, the job fair, that came up. Because some people were saying, oh, these people come here and they all want to be behind a desk and push paper. Yeah. They don't want to get technical. And it even goes to our TVET training in this country and what we're doing with it. But do wrap up on your point, Mami.
Yeah, so that's it. And then you were just asking about the thing about the Guinea and the mandate, ECOWAS mandate and everything. Yeah, so I mean, at the end of the day, like people will tell you, there's a lot of mimicked institutions within the continent, right? So it's like, whether it's the AU and stuff, you saw that play out with Libya. Yeah. When even Thabo Mbeki told NATO that, listen, we're going to handle this, with the whole Gaddafi thing.
It didn't work.
No, because even NATO had a mandate. They were not supposed to enter Tripoli, but they violated it, right? But you can never try this.
And interestingly, there were no consequences from our regional body.
And there were no consequences from the international body. So we also have to understand, that's why I kept telling you that even the powers that be, but like he's rightfully said, I think that when people have reached 60 and they're like 50, even 40, you cannot really do much about mental shift. But if you really want to change the future of this continent, start with the young people and really begin to, because listen, our minds, if people knew how damaged our mentality is, then we'll understand why we have the bad results we have. We shouldn't be poor. We shouldn't be hungry. Even forget the extended family system. Ghana has too much money to be living on loans. But you see the system, like it goes back to the Bretton Woods. There are so many dynamics at play. But if we begin to work on, you feel hopeless if you want to try. You can't change a president who is 70, who is 60, 80, wearing pampers. You cannot do much with their mindset. But no, I'm so sorry to say that. But you can do something about the young people who are there now. And you can start in your home, the value system that he spoke about. Whether it's about corruption, it goes back to small things, right? Even the idea of when the father has to eat the biggest meat. It's a wrong mentality, and the kids have to wait when the father is eating while standing there.
When children rather need the protein to grow, and elderly people actually don't need that much protein.
Thank you. But it comes from poverty. Or when you go to a wedding and people are full. But the idea of seeing the food there,
and still grabbing,
the poverty mindset kicks in that, what if I don't get some?
So what you're saying feeds into, and it reminds me of the title of the album of Lauryn Hill from way back, The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. You were talking about miseducation. So I want us to look at that in the concept of WASI leakages for
let's
God
go to
knows
the job creation.
No, unfortunately, we don't have so much time on that. But this entire enterprise of every year, there'll be leakages, there'll be this, there'll be that, sometimes at the basic level, more often at the WASI, senior high school level and all of that. We've been through the system, maybe donkey years, but we've still been through the system. I look at it and I begin to ask myself, maybe isn't it because we've made it zero sum? If you don't, they are terminal exams. You don't pass your WASI, there are no options for you, basically, if you want to go to university or all of that. So people use every avenue possible to get there. I'll start with you, Mami.
I wrote WASI, so I can tell you I wrote NOVDEC. And it's funny because I'll tell you this, I even asked somebody when the COVID happened and, Nigeria decided to postpone the exams.
Right.
I was like, man, Ghana, this is a great chance to say, you know what, let's revise this thing. Because now we're trying to go into this whole one district, one factory thing. This is the time to now prepare these young people for the kind of Ghana we want. But no, we want to maintain the WASI thing, graduate people who would probably not be able to go to university, finish university, not be able to have jobs. But you see, we are stuck, like I said, the mindset. We are stuck in this unhealthy cycle of repeating the same mistake. You're going to ask yourself, what is wrong? So the WASI thing, the leakage thing, it's not a today thing. It's been happening for the longest time. And we keep having the same results and we keep sending our kids to write the same exams. WASI is a waste. I'm going to tell you this. I'm going to be very honest.
WASI is a waste.
It's a waste. I tell you, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm so sorry. It's a waste because people have sat home for years because of math and English that they never use. I sat home because of math. You know what I mean? When I finished writing the math, just so I could get to university.
I'm sorry.
No. I'm going to tell you. I'm going to be very, very frank with you. And when I wrote the math again, I did the Second World War. Let me tell you, it's rough out there. Okay, when you write the World War and the results come, the way your parents face you about the F, But I'll tell you the truth. I sit here, I don't use math for anything. We're not all the same. Some people need math, some people don't need math. If America cares about the SAT and stuff,
it's like telling a fish to climb a tree.
My goodness, we are coastal states. We should even have studies about how our waters work, our territorial waters. The fisheries, that's like huge. That's a $1 billion industry. Even about your oil thing, you can start, look at in India, they start from GSS. So when Ghanaians go and do engineering in India, they cannot make it. You know why? The math that you are learning in university, they learn this thing in primary. In high school, sorry. So anyway, fundamentally, all I'm just trying to say is that we need to revise. You see, India did that because they're trying to go into manufacturing.
Right.
But now we have to ask ourselves, where do we want Ghana to be in 20 years? What will help us get there?
Do we want to industrialize? What are we going to focus on?
Yes.
Dubai in the United Arab Emirates did not become this. There was a plan. If you read that book, I've just forgotten, Maktoum, yes. Sheikh Maktoum.
Yes.
We want to become the world's go-to place when it comes to tourism and this and that. I've been in Cuba. They had the same plan. And it's interesting because some of these countries we speak of initially didn't have anything close to the resources we have sitting here in Ghana. So indeed, we are sitting on wealth, but Elvis.
Because you are copying the West. You don't know what you have. And you don't know what you can do with it. So you are copying the West, thinking that your job creation and everything, your education still has to be from the West. But that's the wrong mentality. The entire of Europe, Germany is the workshop of Germany,
yeah.
of Europe.
Of Europe.
Okay? I have a colleague who lives there, and he tells me the educational system is simple. As you start school, your parents and your teachers work together to identify what you can do. So by the time you get to secondary school, they know that you are not fit for academics. You are for technical and vocational. They show you a path, they channel you out. You don't need to be going past 9, 12 subjects in WASI. They have identified that this is what you can do, they push you there. So only few people go actually to typical academics in Germany. But the majority are guided and directed to go into vocational, technical, and other places.
And look at industry in Germany.
So by the time they are finished school, a job is waiting.
Right.
So they tailored their system that we want to be the production hub in Europe. So we want to create people who then do production. And by the time you are 11 years in school, every year you spend 1 day at a company of your choice.
Right.
And they take you through their production process and work. And this company writes a report to the school that when you came, this is how you performed. So based on those reports and your performance in school, by the time you get to secondary school, they have identified which particular areas of interest.
So that's the way to go for
and
them.
where you are good at. So by the time you finish secondary school, they are not concerned whether you can go and read whatever law or whatever or doctor. No, they know those who can do medicine, those who can. They know the number of engineers they have to. The rest, all of you are going to technical, and everybody comes out and has a job because By the time you finish the technical university, you are fit for the purpose. Right. And they even have a system where, even when you're in the technical system, because they know that some people are slow learners. Somebody, it's at the tertiary that the person picks up. So if they push you to the technical vocational, and they realize that now you are picking up so fast to be a pure academic, they shift you back from the technical university level and send you back to the academic system to go and become the technocrat that they need. This is how a country has tailored the educational system. We have gone to copy something, and that's what we have been doing all this while, and we don't have to, we don't want to change. We are not thinking, how can it be in a country and there is, how many schools teach agriculture or aquaculture in this country? It is not attractive, so we made it unattractive. Today we said the world is moving to IT. There is no single secondary school in Ghana where you can say this is purely teaching technology. There's no JSS where they say they teach only technology. So students who want to learn only technology or IT, this is your secondary school, this is your junior high school. There's none. And we think we want to join the League of Nations that are making it to the next generation. It is impossible. We have to start rethinking this country. We should begin to realize that the opportunities for this country for industrialization lies with agriculture. That's our competitive advantage. Our focus in terms of education.
And we really do have to wrap up, but make that.
Our education should be directed towards where our competitive advantage lies. But now people go to do marketing, advertising, journalism, media, all kinds of things. Who is going to create a job for you to become an accountant?
Good question.
Which job are you going to become an accountant or advertiser?
We are all in agreement, at least when it comes to agriculture and, you know, zeroing in on our strengths. I'll give you 30 seconds, Mami, and we'll wrap.
I mean, I think from the whole discussion, I think one of the key things that's just come up, like tailoring, whether that is your economic system, your political system, to create results. It's all about results at the end of the day. And I think that there's a reason why we have a human brain, and there are like over 1 billion neurons there. We have to begin to use them, because it's an insult to our heritage as Africans, as Ghanaians, to keep doing the same thing and getting the same results and crying that life is not working for us. So
this has been refreshing, honestly, and it's good to have, you know, pretty young people, let's say, you know, discourse on the future of Ghana, our leadership, and all of that. I always pray, though, that hopefully when we get the opportunities to be at the helm of affairs, we actually do what Mother Ghana
You can't do it, the system will block you.
Well,
we have to change the system.
There are challenges, and the system must be changed by people who would be willing to effect those changes. Thank you very much, Elvis Darko, editor, The Finder newspaper. We're so grateful, sir. Thank you for coming. There's also Mohamed Dakwa, a Winador, international trade law expert. They joined the conversation. But we're talking about the miseducation of Lauryn Hill, right? How about we wrap BTH with something from Lauryn Hill, The Lost Ones. Enjoy.